Welcome to the Hockey Writers Prospect Corner, a show with our top prospects writing crew, bringing you the latest news, analysis, scouting reports, mocks, rankings, and much more. From the World Juniors to the NHL Draft floor, from the farm to the NHL, our team covers everything that happens in the world of prospects. So sit back, grab a notebook, and get ready for Prospect Corner.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Prospect Corner presented by the Hockey Writers. Today, we're going to be taking a look at the latest draft rankings for the 2024 NHL Draft from our very own Peter Baracchini. I am your host, Logan Horn, and today I'm joined by my co-hosts and fellow prospect analysts, Matthew Zator and Peter Baracchini. How are you doing today, Matt?
Doing good. We're right in the thick of preseason now. A few games have been played. They got the Australia Global Series is wrapping up, and yeah, hockey's back. And already saw a Logan Cooley probably goal of the year already. That was amazing. But yeah, well, if that's a sign of things to come, we're going to be in for an exciting season coming up.
Yeah, we're going to have lots to talk about here, not just with like today's episode, like future drafts, but also all the drafted prospects and the Calder Trophy race and everything this year is going to be. I mean, we're pretty spoiled. I think it's going to be pretty fun. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. Peter, how are you doing?
Doing good. Like Matt said, hockey's already here. Even though it's preseason, it's still exciting. And yeah, it's been a very hectic, last 24 hours or so. So you know what? Unfortunately, I haven't been able to watch the Global Series because, time difference or whatever. But you know what? Seeing the highlights of everything is just absolutely phenomenal at this point.
Yeah, it's been a ton of fun. It's always cool to see NHL hockey, even just preseason action outside of typical North American markets. And Australia is just such a cool choice. Hopefully help grow the game there a little bit. And who knows, maybe we'll see some fruits from this 10, 20 years from now or something like that. Or maybe they'll have to continue it before that happens, but you never know. So yeah, that's great. I'm looking forward to all that stuff too. Preseason is really kicking off now. The regular season is not far away. Most leagues are about to start their regular seasons, so we'll have a lot of league play to talk about pretty soon for a lot of these players, but we don't have that yet for most of them. So instead, we're going to go into your latest draft rankings for the 2024 draft. Those came out just this past week as we're recording. And yeah, I just want to dig right into these. So obviously we've got kind of the same names at the top, which, everyone has those names up unless you're a contrarian who just wants attention. But walk us through your top five right now. I mean, the top two or three names, maybe we don't need to spend too much time on, but walk us through what you've got in the top five so far.
Yeah, my top five, starting at one, is Macklin Celebrini. He's the top one at this point. Cole Eiserman, 2. Ivan Demidov, surprisingly, at 3, even though I was contemplating putting him second, and this is going to be a tight race itself. Sam Dickinson from the London Knights at 4, and Artyom Levshunov from Michigan State at number 5.
Nice. So you got a bit of a variety. You got 2 defensemen. I'm curious. So what made you pick Eiserman over Demidov right now? I know you've gone back and forth. I think your early one in the middle of the summer, your first dive into this draft. I think, if I'm not mistaken, you had Demidov second.
It was still Eiserman and Demidov.
Oh, it was.
Yeah,
okay.
it was still that, but
yeah.
Again, even like when Bob McKenzie released his top 16, it's like that 1, 2, 3 right now. It's like a 3-horse race at this point because they're all a different type of player. Eiserman with his shot and, scoring abilities. Demidov is like a very dynamic, very skilled with the puck, very, crafty and creative, and he plays at such a high level pace. And Celebrini, obviously he's injured, but we see what he's able to do at international tournaments. He probably would have lit up the Helenius Gretzky if he was healthy. But it's just like at this point, there's merit to having Demidov above Eiserman at this point, even if he continues to impress or if he gets more ice time, or because, in the KHL, it is difficult for, rookie skaters to get that type of action. if he's able to elevate his play, and if he gets sent down and he's like scoring at like a 2-point per game pace, maybe, yeah, he probably rises up. But it's very, very close between all three. It's basically 1A, 1B, 1C, because you don't know where things are going to end up throughout the year, because things could change.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lots of room for change. I mean, nothing's set in stone, especially like you mentioned. We don't get to see Celebrini yet. We won't see him for a little bit here. And even then, he's just going to be recovering from an injury. So if he has a slow start, that's not the worst thing in the world. It'd be pretty understandable. But yeah, it does feel like this is the top three. Just wait and see what happens to the top three. But Matt, what are your thoughts on the top five here? And also, I'm just curious, is Celebrini your number one right now? And if so, like, how big is that gap? I'm just curious.
Oh, I like the top five. A lot of these names, like Cole Eiserman has been one of our top guys for a while. Maxim Celebrini, of course. But yeah, I'd say Celebrini is probably my number one as well. I mean, he's, like we said, I haven't seen him this season yet, but I think we've seen enough of him to kind of say, yeah, he's the number one. We'll see how he does in the NCAA, because, it is a different type of league. Like we said, the different, higher end players are playing against stronger players. But if he can do what Adam Fantilli did last season, I think he'll be fine. Not to put that much pressure on him, because Fantilli had an amazing season in the NCAA last year. But I think he's capable of doing it. He's going to be on a great team as well. So, I mean, I wouldn't put it past him, but I wouldn't expect it. I mean, if he doesn't do it, it's like, okay, he shouldn't be the number one. But got a ton of skill. He's definitely my first overall. Eiserman, I would put 2, and Demidov, even though he's been kind of up and down with ice time this season to start, it's kind of frustrating to see, because, and Scott St. Petersburg has been notorious for that. Had to go through with Vasily Podkolzin
doing
quite
that with
a bit.
Michkov again.
Michkov as well. Seems like they don't like young players. They don't want to play them. Even though they're super skilled and probably will give them a great chance to win games, they don't seem to want to give them that ice time. And if they do, it's only like for 1 or 2 games, and then they're back to their normal, very little ice time. So it's frustrating to see Demidov. And when he does come in, he looks really good. So, I mean, why can't you play him more? But whatever. But he would still be my number 3. And those 2 defensemen are probably the top 2 defensemen for me as well. So, it's not fun. It's not fun to have no debates here, but I can't disagree. I think they're in there as well.
That's totally fair. It's a tough group to analyze. I mean, I'll start with Celebrini as well myself. There's room for movement here. Like, I think it's reasonable to think he could have maybe a Matty Beniers level, like NCAA draft year, where he's like a point per game, and that's good, but it probably won't be enough to keep him at first overall. If that's all he does, it might be, because he's very good and he's a center. But then the range from that to like an Adam Fantilli, like 1.6 points or whatever he had, 1.7 per game. That's a significant range. And if he's closer to the Fantilli side, then I feel like he's going to run away with it. Just with the position and the way he plays is a lot safer, projects as an NHL center, which Demidov and Eiserman do not. So I think that's huge value. Eiserman and Demidov, I agree with you guys. Those are my 2-3, almost interchangeable, but until we get to actually watch Demidov play a little more, it's hard to put him above Eiserman, who's very early on, but he's lighting it up for the NTDP so far to start the year. I think he has 7 points in 4 games or something, which is nuts. We knew he was going to do that anyway, but I'm sure those numbers will only get more ridiculous.
And let's not forget about the Russian factor too, which is
absolutely.
why Demidov may not even go number 1 anyways, but skill set is definitely evident.
Sure. Yeah, that will still be a factor. Hopefully some stuff can change in the world and we can kind of start to peel that back again. But currently it's unlikely that even if he was the right pick talent wise that he'd go first. Also, though, when you have great centers and defensemen, it's not common you see a winger go first overall in today's NHL. I agree that the rest of your top five is real solid. I can't really argue against those guys. I might have Berkly, Catton in my top five.
Yeah.
He's definitely not in that top group of those top three forwards, but
the next tier.
He's the top of the next one. And I wouldn't be shocked if he could kind of rise up a little bit with a good draft year. But as of now, he's not there. No one else I'd really argue goes in the top five. So I think we're roughly in agreement here. So Peter, I've got a different question for you then. Who from throughout the rest of your list, or someone who maybe didn't even make it, who do you think has the best chance of rising up significantly by the time of the draft? Obviously, we have people that will come out of the woodworks that you've never heard of at this point in time, who go in the top 20 probably. But who's someone that you're aware of that you think has a good chance to impress you enough to really kick themselves up the list?
Well, I talked about him after the Helenius Gretzky Cup, and that's Caden Lindstrom. I have him 19th, so he is in my top 20. In 2 games played already, he already has 3 points. Obviously, it's not Cole Eiserman's 7-4 or 7-3. But, he is a very dynamic type of player. Like, he's got the size, the skill, the speed, the work ethic, and the offensive prowess that he has every single time he has a puck. Like, he's just very dominant. And, again, he is in my top 20, but this is a player that I think could rise up into the top 15 at some point, because I'm a big fan of his then, and I'm still a big fan of his right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can kind of just pick anyone on the list, really, because we know so little about their draft years at this point, because most of them haven't even started. But Matt, are there any guys on this list that you think could surprise some people and rise up a bit?
Yeah, I mean, it's very early on, but one guy that's kind of caught my eye is Michael Hage I don't know how his name, but he from the Chicago Steel. He was impressive in the preseason. One clip I saw on Twitter was when he deked around, a guy would pick the puck up in front of him and just snapped a quick shot up top of the net. So, I mean, his wrist shot is already looking. I hate saying NHL ready, because I mean, a lot of these, but it looks really good
actually. But
he kind of jumped off the page a bit. I know he is on your list, Peter, at 20, but I think he could rise up a bit, especially if he keeps showing that throughout the regular season as well. He's a guy that kind of stood out to me. Another guy we'll talk about a little later is Trevor Connelly. And he's, again, really stood out quite a bit. I don't want to give away our thing later on, but really stood out with his skill on the ice and very good on the power play. He's not on your list, Peter, right now in the top 32, but I think he could eventually rise up, especially if he can keep doing that, and can clean up what we'll talk about later on. But those 2 guys for sure. But already Tanner Howe as well. I mean, a lot of these guys can move around, but those are kind of early on.
Yeah, absolutely. For people that are going to rise, I've got someone that stands out to me is Emil Hemming, who has been off to just an insane start in the top junior league in Finland, like 2 points per game. And then he's played, I think, just 2 Liga games as we're recording this. And he has 2 goals. He's got a great shot. And if he can, maybe have a Joakim Kamel type draft year in Finland, where he comes out of nowhere, but then actually just turns it out in Liga, then we could be talking about him a lot more soon. But also, Peter, you're my favorite, Caden Lindstrom and his buddy Andrew Basha over with the Medicine Hat Tigers. I feel like both of them, but Lindstrom especially, he's just got that NHL frame that teams are going to be obsessed with. He could be someone who maybe gets drafted higher than people expect, if people still underestimate him by the time the draft comes around, which would be insane. But tons of skill, great shot, huge, strong forward already. So I think he's someone that'll continue to rise in a lot of cases. before we, okay. So, Peter, are there any players on this list that you think might go the other direction that you would be willing to slide down, maybe something like that?
Yeah, as much talk as there has been heading into this draft, I think Aaron Kiviharju might be one that could probably drop a little bit more. And It's not because of his hockey sense and his awareness and his ability to move the play. It's just overall upside and consistency, because I know that there were some struggles, but he's still smart with the puck. And that's why he's just hanging on to that number 10 spot. But it wouldn't surprise me if other players are very consistent in having that all-around game, showing those smarts and being productive, especially the defenders too, because it's very possible that Zane Parekh could move up into that top 10. He could probably bump him down. Anton Silyaev, another name that came out of nowhere, Cole Hudson, if he's able to round out his defensive game, maybe he challenges to get into the top 10 again, like I had in my early top 32 or top 16. But yeah, I think Kiviharju is one name that's going to be very, not necessarily polarizing in a bad sense, but where he's going to end up, I think it's going to be the big question, because if other players are playing well, he definitely could drop if the offensive production isn't there. But again, you can't deny his smarts.
Yeah, absolutely. He's going to be an interesting one to watch. We see it every once in a while where you have a player who has been talked about so much for so long in the prospect world that it's hard to, it's hard to ignore them. It's hard to like lower them in your rankings, maybe in this case. But sometimes they deserve it. And you kind of get the opposite sometimes as well, where we talk about someone for so long that you start to like talk yourself out of them being the best prospect. Like we saw that a little bit with Shane Wright. I wouldn't say that was wrong necessarily, but we could see that sometimes with Shane Wright in his draft year. But here it seems like we're getting like, is he that great, or have we just heard his name for so long that we think he's that great? So we've got to, hopefully we get a better sense of that throughout this year. I'm sure we will. Someone who I think could drop, I have him in a similar range as you, Peter, but Tanner Howe of the Regina Pats. He's someone who I'm trying to just keep him in a neutral position for now, because he has shown a lot, and he spent a lot of time last year away from Connor Bedard and was an effective player. But we need to see that he can do it on a team without Bedard. Obviously, it's still a really rough team now without Bedard, but there's still a lot to work with. There's still a few good players, and Howe should be one of them. I'm trying to leave him in a neutral spot personally, but if he wants to even just stay there, he's going to have to play really well. And I'm quite ready to steadily decrease his ranking if it just isn't quite clicking. I have no idea what to expect from him. I mean, I know I can expect him to work real hard and to still probably be the best offensive player for the Pats, but there's a difference between being the best player for the Pats and being a top 16, top 20 pick. So we'll see. Matt, anyone that sticks out to you that you think could start to slide down?
I'll say Anton Silyaev, because he's off to such a great start that you kind of be blinded by it and say, well, he's going to be a great defenseman. But if he falls off, like we've talked off air about this, and if he falls off and starts going back to more of, is it sustainable is the biggest thing. Is the 6 points in 8 games sustainable over a full season? We'll see, especially on a KHL team. You don't know how much ice time he's going to get. I mean, he's getting pretty decent amount right now, but that can fall off pretty quickly. Especially if he starts not producing, and they'll start seeing, okay, we're going to drop him down. But very impressive right now. But I think he could definitely be a guy that could drop, especially if his production doesn't as much. But I mean, his package, even if you look at it, 6'7", 207 pounds, big guy. I mean, he's not even in his full frame yet. And that, if he hits the NHL at that size, geez, I mean, that's going to be insane. But that's way down the road. But yeah, I think he could definitely drop from. I mean, you have him at 14th, Peter, but he could drop into the lower end of the first round. I think he could still be a first round pick, even if his production does, because everyone loves big, strong
defenders. Yeah.
Oh, that can skate, right?
Mm-hmm.
He can skate too, which we know how even guys that can't skate, like Maverick Lamoureux, he goes in the first round and he's not the best skater. So, but he's big. Yeah. So it's like even that, but there again. So yeah, he's a guy. I think that's the guy that really stands out for me right now. You could see if again this movement is going to happen, but he's definitely stands out for me.
And that's why I didn't have him in my top 10. Like, even though he has popped off, it's in that middle ground area where he's like middle of the pack, but let's see more of what he can do before we say, okay, yeah, he's definitely worth being a top 10 pick.
Yeah, it's really early in the draft year. So, someone coming out of the gate that you've never heard of, scoring 4 points in 4 games, 6 and 8 games, in such a good league. It's easy to overcorrect and be like, I didn't have him, and now he's doing stuff that you would expect from like maybe a top 2 or top 3 pick genuinely. And so it's easy to overcorrect a little. So I think you probably have the right methodology there, Peter, of trying to just find an even ground where you can slowly move up or down depending, because I actually agree with you, man. It feels like the floor for him at this point, unless he just falls apart, is probably still a first rounder, just because of what NHL teams want. But I'm going to say it right now. If he can score even like close, like a little bit under half a point per game in the KHL this year, like maybe even just like a third of a point per game, like first overall. Like, I don't know that I would take him first overall, but he's going to go first overall if he can do that, because 6'7", skates well, defends okay for a 17-year-old. He defends really well, considering he's playing like 18 minutes in the KHL every night. But if he can score like that, he's going to go very, very high. He'll have to prove he can, though. So he's got time to prove it. I guess we already answered this question, but Matt, I'll come to you. Is there anyone you think's maybe a little overrated already in the draft process? I guess Anton Siliev, maybe?
Yeah,
too far.
He's the guy that comes out already. I mean,
that's fair.
I don't really see anyone else that's being overrated. I mean, especially on the list that Peter put out here. And I mean, they're all kind of falling into where I would probably put him. Siliev maybe a little lower for me, just looking at will he stay there. But his skill set really still puts him in that range. But I think he may be a little overrated. I think maybe in the 20s is where I maybe throw him. But very early on, I don't really overrated kind of is to say that early on.
Yeah, it's a hard word to do. People have to be rated before they can be overrated and underrated. So maybe that'll be an easier question to answer later in the year. Someone I'll say, and I'm so sorry, Matt, plug your ears. Not on your list, Peter, but just in general, Cole Hudson, I think, is getting a little more attention than he. I think people are setting themselves up for disappointment again. He's probably going to be drafted earlier than Lane was, just because Lane has kind of paved the way, showing that it can work at very least in college hockey. Not quite the pros yet. If Lane was in the AHL this year and he does great, then who knows? Maybe Cole can go even higher up. I do think Cole is a slightly better skater, which is a big deal because both of them are great skaters. I think he's going to be a good player. I've seen some people talking about him as if he's a top 5 talent, and then he'll go in like the top 10, top 16. And I don't know that I see that yet. He's very talented. It's just, you really have to show me that you can do it in the NHL at that size. It's just, I can't believe it until I see it. I want to believe it, but at this point, I think he's getting a little too much acclaim for such a remote possibility that he would be that successful in the NHL. I could be completely wrong, and I'd love that, because it's easy to root for players who are exceptions rather than just the standard. So I hope it works out, but for now he seems like he's getting a little more attention than I have been giving him, I guess. Peter, anyone stand out to you in this draft so far that you think might be a little overrated already?
Yeah, you guys mentioned the two already that seem to be getting a lot of hype, but still a lot of uncertainty. And I'm going to say again, I kind of have him in my top 10, Adam Jiricek, because there's still a little bit of that raw defensive game, but he's in that similar path that David Jiricek has, and he could very well, match his type of presence and his skill set at some point. But I think that there's still a little bit too much of a high risk, high reward kind of player. But then again, if he's able to round out his defensive game and still maintain that aggressive style defensively without, getting caught in a bad situation, I think it'll work out. Still a lot of work, but the upside is there. I think it's just a little bit too much, but maybe not as much as that of Saleyev or even Hudson at this point. But again, a lot of uncertainty there where, his offensive game is great, but I still need to see more of his play without the puck. But there are certain points to his defensive game where he will round out.
Yeah, absolutely. He's got time still. It's fun that we have a couple brothers of top NHL defense prospects on defense, like Cole Hudson and Adam Jiricek. And you can see in both cases, I think the younger brothers are better skaters and play kind of similar games. I think Adam Jiricek doesn't have the physicality that David does, his older brother. But he has a lot of similarities. You're right. And we need to see that he can defend. And I mean, it's still tough to gauge play in certain European leagues at this point. We need a little bit larger of a sample size of high-end prospects coming from certain leagues. And this will be one of those cases where, maybe he got a little, he burst onto the scene. Everyone loved watching him at the Helenius Gretzky, but now league play will start. We have to see if he's the real deal or not, I guess. And then quickly before we take a little break here, someone that you think is underrated, someone that's not getting enough attention so far. Matt, I'll come to you first. Anyone stand out to you there?
Well, I'm pretty sure I mentioned him in our early talk about, I believe it's during the Helenius Gretzky, Adam Titelbach, Vancouver Giants. And he's 32 on your list, Peter, but I think he's a little underrated at 32. I think he could be even higher. Everyone knows I love undersized players and super skilled, 5'9", really exciting player. Those 5 goals in 5 games at the Helenius Gretzky was phenomenal. It was probably one of their best players, maybe even their best player. And very exciting to see him with the Vancouver Giants this season. Giants have started their season already, but yeah, I'm excited to watch him all season. I think he could end up being higher than 32.
Absolutely. I mean, lots of room for movement with some of those guys that are at this point in the year when you're making a list like this. These are guys that you're very intrigued by, but you just haven't maybe seen enough of. Just quality wise, quantity wise. I mean, and I agree. I think there's definitely room for some change there in this list with Titelbach. Peter, anyone stand out to you as being underrated by the masses in the 2024 draft so far?
Yes, and he, as I said this before, where I'm going with this. He's number 11, and that is Beckett Seneca.
Yeah, big fan.
Big fan, but not I'm ranking him high because I believe in the skill set that he has, and he's not getting as much attention compared to other early rankings or preseason rankings that I'm seeing right now, where maybe he's mid 20s into the second round. I mean, when you are the second most productive rookie behind Michael Misa. Then again, Misa missed a ton of games, 45, but still productive with 55 and 61 games on a kind of average Oshawa Generals team. You have the second or 5th most goals as a rookie. That's impressive results. And every single time I was watching the Generals, like I said, I've always been drawn more to him than I was Cal Ritchie scouting this season. And the shot, the creativity, the hands that he possesses, the ability to cut into the middle of the ice and catch defenders off guard, it's absolutely impressive. And I think he's going to have a big season. And if he was on the Helenius Gretzky Cup team, I'm kind of surprised that he wasn't. I'm pretty sure he would have been one of the top 2 or 3 producers on Team Canada if that was the case. I'm that much of a firm believer in him. We'll see where the season starts, but from what I saw last season, I'm still high on him that he could still replicate that.
Nice. That's a great one. I have too many to count. Not to count. I can count that high. But anyway, I've just got a bunch of guys that I feel like need to get a little more attention. One is Ryder Ritchie. I think he kind of has gotten lost in the mix a little bit. I think just with some of the amazing WHL talent the last few years. But I think he belongs pretty high up in the conversation. He was the Rookie of the Year in the WHL last year on an absolutely atrocious team that is hopefully on the upswing now with a ton of prospects from the WHL Bantam draft recently. Tons and tons of talent. Watch out for Richie. Carter Yakimchuk, Calgary Hitman, defenseman, very close to being eligible for the 2023 draft. And I honestly believe if he would have been a first rounder. Right shot defenseman, scored a lot of points. A little shaky through some of the tournaments in the offseason, but I believe in him. And then lastly, someone who's got, I think you have him 31st, which I'm just happy to see him on a list. Simon Zether, Swede. He's a 6'2" right shot centerman. Great skill with the puck. Good playmaking. He works really hard. He is really high compete level. The issue is his skating at this point. He's pretty heavy. And that, that's the kind of thing that, if teams think they can fix it and they think you have enough else going on, you could be a top 10 pick. Mm-hmm. But if they're terrified of it, then you could be a second rounder or a third rounder. We see it every year. Someone that we think has a ton of skill and a ton of great traits, but the skating is it just scares teams off. So maybe that's what could happen with Zether, but I'm a believer right now. I think his skating is weird and awkward, but it's good enough to go with all of the rest of his attributes right now. I think he's a really good prospect, someone to keep an eye on as the year gets going, because he scored a ton early on in Swedish Junior this year. So that's my pick. Let me see. Okay, we're gonna just take a quick break here, but we'll be right back after a quick word from the Hockey Writers.
Interested in writing for the Hockey Writers? If you have experience writing about hockey, are passionate about the sport, and are looking to take your writing to the next level, the Hockey Writers could be the place for you. Here at THW, you will have the opportunity to hone your craft at one of the world's largest and most respected hockey publishers. You will have control over what you write, be able to seek out media credentials, and be supported by a large network of writers and editors. Plus, you'll get paid for doing it. If you're interested and want to know more about team openings and requirements, please visit the Write for THW page on the Hockey Writers website. A link to that page is also listed in the description.
All right, so Peter, you and I have talked about this outside of the show, and we just mentioned it a little earlier, but I wanted to get some of your thoughts on Trevor Connelly, a prospect who an anonymous NHL scout recently said, and I quote, he has top 10 skill and bottom 10 character. So obviously Trevor Connelly is a super talented prospect, and I think we can agree that on pure talent, roughly a top 10 pick. So what went into you leaving him off your list at this point? What are your thoughts on Trevor Connelly right now?
Yeah, he's definitely an interesting case. That is for sure. Yeah, that tweet was sent out by Cam Robinson over at Elite Prospects, where he was at the USHL. I guess like one of those early massive like tournaments or all-star games. And the Fall Classic, and that's where the top 10 talent, but the reason why he's not in there is because of that bottom 10 character. And if no one is aware, the Rink Live did a good interviewer player in-depth look at Connelly's past issue with a social media post where if you go to Rink Live, it's a great article by Jordan McAlpine. It goes into depth about how it happened, what happened, and what he's doing to atone for that. And it's great. You rarely see that with some of the other instances that we've heard in the past where, players are a red flag, something happens, and you really don't hear much of how they atone for their actions. At least you're seeing this with Connelly. But hearing this right now, how it's still bottom 10 character, I'm not going to jump to conclusions whether it's still off ice issues or maybe, attitude, maybe just having like a little bit too much swagger on ice. because we have seen that before where players do have a chip on their shoulders and they feel like, they got something going. But it's still a bit of a cautious approach for me at this point, because I'm one that values character and work ethic and whether you're doing the right things on and off the ice. That's big for me. And obviously we saw in that article that Connelly's doing a lot off the ice to help grow the game, be more inclusive, and learn from his mistakes. But if there's still something happening right now that's still has a bit of an uneasy feeling with me, which is why he's not in my top 32 or even as an honorable mention at this point. Until we could get some more info, I think that may change. But it's just me being a little bit extra cautious based on past events of what we've seen. But then again, bit of a different scenario because we have seen progress and people are saying that he has progressed, but we'll see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's fair to be cautious at this point. We don't know Trevor Connelly personally. We don't know what went into his mistakes and what he's put into bettering himself. And it's kind of tough to place him. I mean, on talent, we know where we could place him. But
absolutely,
there's more going on. And I mean, you see people rise in the draft every year because of their character. Someone like Tom Willander at the draft combine, like really endeared himself to a bunch of teams. Just a really intelligent, mature young man. And the opposite can be true as well. Sometimes players who you think very highly of on the ice can have some other issues going on. Maybe a Nail Yakupov, some teams putting him on the do not draft list, even though he went first overall for talent. So yeah, it's a bit of a weird situation. We're kind of in limbo here a little bit. I mean, he's behind the eight ball a little bit. It's kind of hard to change people's first impression of you.
Yeah.
And it's tough to prove that you've learned from it and that you've changed. So at very least, once teams get the chance to really get to know him, and their scouts will get to know him throughout this year, I'm sure. But once teams really get the chance to get to know him and meet with him, they'll have their homework cut out for them. They've got some work going to make sure that he's grown and learned from it. But until we hear much else, who knows? So I think it's totally fair to leave him off at this point. Yeah, we'll come back if there's more to talk about Trevor Connelly with this. Okay, so I've got one more question before a fun little versus segment that I want to try out. And Matt, I'll start with you here. Which prospect in the 2024 NHL Draft are you ready to officially join the hype train for? This is the person you're going to be just championing the whole time. And it can be anyone. You could pick Max Celebrini if you're feeling pretty boring. I'm not going to lie, that'd be kind of boring. But you can. He's really fun. So I'd let you do it.
Cole Hudson. He's already I think I've already officially pitched my wagon.
I did that a few months ago.
Yeah, his hype train already. I do agree that he's maybe a bit overrated because of his brother. You're thinking that he's going to be the same. He's looking like he is right now, but I'm still on board. I think he's going to end up being a really good future defenseman in the NHL, but very early on, I am on his hype train. And then another guy I just mentioned was Adam Titelbach, because he's already and I always look for the undersized guys and look at how they are first and see and those are the guys that kind of get excited about already. So he's another one I'll officially add my name to as well.
Nice. It's a good list. It's a good starter. Good place to start out. By the end of the year, we all have a dozen or more guys that we're just cheering for, like, unabashedly. But Peter, what about you? Who are I guess you can give multiple if you like. Who are you joining the hype train for this year? Who are you really going to be pushing?
I already mentioned them, Beckett Seneca and Kaden Lidstrom, and you could just scroll back to timestamps to hear us talk about or hear me talk about both of them. So yeah again, I'm going to be championing. There we go. Both of them this season. Jeez.
Yeah. Okay. For myself, I'm just going to go with one for now because I need to keep seeing some of these guys to really decide on my others, because I got to be choosy here. But easy one for me is Michael Brandsegg-Nygard, Oslo, Norway, native. Well, I guess he lives in Sweden right now. He's playing in Allsvenskan, actually, because he scored 9 points in his first 3 junior games, and they're like, maybe you don't need to play there. He spent a lot of last year in the Allsvenskan, but they started him off in junior this year, where he was clearly too good. Great shot, really good hands. He works super hard. No real blemishes in his game right now. It's just how high end are his skills offensively and defensively. That'll just determine where he lands, probably. But I'm a big fan of Nygard, of Brandsegg-Nygard. And I personally think where do you have him right now, Peter? You have him 13th, which I think is fair. I think that's maybe in the middle of where people would consider him range wise. But I've got him pretty high, guys. So you'll find out later. But he's going to be pretty high on mine. I think he's going to be a really good player. Best Norwegian of all time, maybe. Who knows? I mean, he'll be the best Norwegian prospect the moment he's drafted. But who knows? There's more time for that. Okay, so now I want to get to this little versus series, and we talked about some of these pairings a little bit before. And I might try this out at times throughout the draft year when we have people that we need a little bit of debate for. So it's not going to be too organized of a debate or anything. You're welcome to just say the name that you would rather have, or you can add a little extra, whatever you like. So Matt, I'm going to come to you first with the first one we have here: Cole Eiserman or Ivan Demidov.
This one's pretty. Yeah, I mean, this is pretty easy right now. I'd say Cole Eiserman because, like you said, he's already shown a ton early on here. Demidov in spurts, I want to see more. Just give him more ice time, and then we can see more. And then but Eiserman right now.
Sure. I mean, you would think that wouldn't be a big ask. Like, you have one of the best prospects in hockey, play him. But actually, they're just not going to do it. So who knows what'll happen there. Peter, what about you? Eiserman or Demidov?
Tough, but I'm leaning towards Demidov over Eiserman at this point. I know, a bit of a shock, right? But again, I just love the dynamicism, the pace of play that he plays with. It's always quick. He's always keeping everyone on their toes, and he just makes everybody look foolish. And not to say that Eiserman doesn't have like a well-rounded game, but Demidov's two-way play is a little bit more evident from what I've seen. And I really like that, especially when I believe he's both a center and a wing, but I think plays wing more. Demidov, so you know what? I think that with that, because of that unpredictability and how he's, changing everything, his angling, his speed, all of that. Mm-hmm. He's a great shooter and playmaker too. So he's kind of like a dual threat. So I'm just going to give it to Demidov for the time being.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm going with Eiserman. I think Demidov, of the top 3 in this draft, probably has the most pro style game, but that might be because he's played pro hockey more than the rest of them. So who knows? But Eiserman, I still would have above him just because the shot and his ability to find soft spots in coverage and get open for shots is really impressive. And I think he has a real chance of being like a premier goal scorer in the NHL, like 40 plus goals several times in his career. I think that's pretty realistic for him at this point, although there's a lot of projecting to do there. But I've still got Eiserman. Next up, we have the battle of the very large two-way defensemen who are going to be projects for the next few years in Levshunov and Dickinson. Peter, you have 4th and 5th, but Peter, I'll come to you on this one. Levshunov or Dickinson?
Dickinson, really big believer in his game and how it could take like a little bit more of a big step forward. Again, it's very close between the two because they have similar skill sets. But this season, I want to see what Dickinson can do more, and if he rises to the occasion of getting those more minutes with the London Knights. And the Hunters don't give players opportunities unless they're ready for it. I think he's ready.
Nice. Yeah, I mean, it's a strange pairing. They both are great defensively and physically, and they're very big, imposing imposing forces on defense, but both of them have a little bit to prove offensively, I think, this year. And while the NCAA is going to be a lot harder to score in for Levshunov, there's actually some decent talent on that team this year, and Michigan State. And I don't know. I'm going with Levshunov just because I see a little bit of Owen power in his game. And if he can really show the offense in the NCAA, then I'll really start to use that power comparison more. But it's close. Matt, what about you? Levshunov or Dickinson?
Going Dickinson because it may be Levshunov the next time you ask me, because we'll see how he does in the NCAA. If he shows really well there, I'm going to pick him because, like I said, the NCAA is a tougher league. If he looks very mature there, I'm going to go with him. But for right now, I'm going Dickinson because he's shown a bit more to me so far.
Totally fair. Okay, next up, we've got some of the forwards in the next group of forwards past that top three. And Matt, I'll start you off on this one. Berkly, Catton, or Konsta, Helenius?
Oh, it's a tough one because they're both super skilled and undersized and strong work ethic, two-way games. I can see why you put them together because they are a tough one to go between.
I don't want to make your job easy.
I'm going to go Berkly Catton though, just because of his ability to be a clutch player. That's a skill in itself. Be able to step up when your team needs you, and he did that a lot for Team Canada and the Helenius Gretzky. Ton of goals. He scored a lot and very, very skilled with and without the puck. So I'm going to go with Catton at this point.
I'd agree with you there. I'm a huge Konsta Helenius fan, and I will be arguing for his sake all year, I'm sure. But yeah, I just Catton's offense is incredible. And I mean, it's easier to see that when he scores a ton of points in junior and like junior age tournaments. And Helenius is playing against pros, so it's not as common. But I think Catton, I'd be leaning Catton as well for now. Peter, what about you? Catton or Helenius?
Yeah, I'll make it 3 for Berkly Catton. Again, what he was able to do at the Helenius Gretzky was just absolutely bonkers. Like when the team needed him, needed their captain, he showed it, and he leads on and off the ice, and he's just very strong in all 3 zones. So Berkly Catton.
Nice. Okay, so this one, I know the answer for you, Peter, just by looking at your rankings. There's quite the gap between these two guys, but I think it's worth a little bit of conversation. Henry Mews versus Charlie Elick, 2 big right shot defensemen in the CHL this year. So Peter, what are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I'm going Henry Mews, and that's nothing against Charlie Elick. I think that if he's able to round out or get a little bit more offensive production, I think he could make that battle or improve his stock a little bit more, because he is more of a shutdown defensive-minded defenseman, but some transitional game. But Henry Mews is already showing that he could produce on the back end very consistently, and I think he's up for a big year this season, and I think he's going to obviously surpass on his point totals and what he was able to do, and even his goal total, because I believe he hit double digits last year as well. So I'm going with Mews.
Yeah, that's totally fair. I mean, the gap between them on your list was like almost 20 spots or something. So I think I knew that was where you'd probably lean.
Yeah.
But, I'm just curious your thoughts. Matt, what about you? Henry Mews, Charlie Elick?
Just to be different, I'll pick Elick because Mews is definitely a highly skilled defenseman, but there's more. I don't know. The NHL needs more of these guys like Elick, a guy that's more that defensive, more modern day defensive defenseman, guy that can. I always compare to Jacob Slavin because guys like that are maybe rare in the NHL right now because they can pair with a good offensive defenseman, but can also produce a bit of offense. We'll see if Elick has a bit more offense to his game, but I think he could be a more valuable defenseman down the line. Nothing against Mews, but I'll go with Elick right now.
That's fair. Yeah, it's a tough one. I think I might lean Mews just barely for myself. Mews definitely has more to show offensively. I said they're both large, but he's actually not that big. I think he's actually 6 feet tall. And Elick is quite a bit larger than that. Definitely has more offense, better hockey IQ. The skating I'm not 100% sold on for Mews. But he's a really great prospect at this point. Right shot D, so that gives you a ton of value in the draft as well. Although I do really like Charlie Elick. I'm a huge fan of his, and watching him play defense in some tournaments this summer, I can't help but think that he could probably step into the NHL sooner than most defensemen here and be a good defenseman. The offense, like you guys mentioned, he's got a ways to go. I think he scored like 11 points all of last season, and he missed some games with an injury, significant games, but still, that's not a lot. And you have to, if you can't score points in the WHL, you're going to be in tough to do it in the NHL. So he might have a bit of a low floor. Like, he might not be able to be an offensive player in the NHL at all, but defensively, I see so much potential. And I think you could see a Dmitry Simashev type rise of a big defender who defends super well, but hasn't shown much offensively, shoot up the draft a little bit. Okay, so last up on this versus for now, Peter, I'll come to you again on this one. Michael Brandsegg-Nygard or Maxim Massé?
This is an easy one. Brandsegg-Nygard. Mainly because of the fact that he's quicker on his feet, he's got more agility and a better stride than Massé. I both are phenomenal goal scorers, but also the power forward game that they both possess. I think Nygard has a little bit more of that tenacity and meanness to his game, along with the physicality. Massé, buzzes around the net and he's digging for loose pucks. But I think, Brandsegg-Nygard and his size, I think it's going to work in his favor more.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Massé, he's really good in front of the net and around the net, but without the puck, he's good at getting in. But when he has the puck and he's trying to attack, I find he can kind of get pushed outside a little bit. He struggles to really charge through into the dangerous areas when he's on the puck. Still a great offensive player, great shot. The skating is terrifying to me. I don't think it's like disqualifying level skating, but it's going to be tough for him to go early in the draft. He's got some work to do there. So Brandsegg-Nygard is my guy here as well. But Matt, what are your thoughts? Brandsegg-Nygard or Massé?
Yeah, I'll go Brandsegg-Nygard as well, because I love guys with hard shots, and he has one. So again, as something that's exciting to see, and hopefully in the NHL someday. But yeah, overall package, I think he's going to he could push to being a top 10 pick, maybe. But yeah, I'll go with Brandsegg-Nygard as well.
Nice. Okay, so we all agreed on that one. Okay, so that's all for that for now. I think we'll come back to this kind of segment here. Try to give some attention to some people who haven't got as much, which is why Celebrini isn't here. Although we had Demidov and Eiserman, so barely counts. Like patting myself on the back for not including the clear number one in all of our eyes. Yeah, good job. Anyway, thanks for playing along with that. We'll move on now to our prospect of the week, the way we love to end our show each week. So Matt, we'll let you start it off. Who's your prospect of the week this week?
We're going with two and Canucks prospects, because I'll go Arshdeep Bains and Akito Hirose. Bains getting he had a great Young Stars Classic, showed well in that, and then now he's getting an opportunity on the third line for the Canucks with P.S. Suter and Connor Garland in the preseason. With Ilya Mikheyev out, I don't know. He's supposed to be back soon, but Bains is going to get an opportunity to showcase himself in the preseason. I'm excited to see him because I loved his game last season in the AHL. I loved his game in the WHL. I'm hoping he'll become a great energy player in the NHL very soon. And then Akito Hirose, he's, again, really good, led the tournament in scoring in the Young Stars. And in the scrimmage this past, I believe it was yesterday, he looked really calm and collected on the blue line, and he showed that in the NHL last season as well. Hopefully he can get in, not playing with Tyler Myers, at least with the groupings right now, but I'm hoping that he can push himself into the opening night lineup, because he's sure making a case for himself right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like he had such a good showing at the end of last year, coming out of college and playing for the Vancouver Canucks right away, not the Abbey Canucks. And then it feels like, for whatever reason, he lost all of that goodwill with the team and has to earn it again, but he's doing a great job of establishing himself again. So that shouldn't be too big of a problem. Probably gets his opportunity soon, I think. Those are great ones. I'm going to be a homer as well and do a Red Wings prospect. Axel, Sandin, Pellikka. We've talked about him tons on this show over the last year. He's playing in the SHL right now, and he scored goals in back-to-back games, which is awesome. And he has had the most or second most ice time in I think at least 3 of his 4 games in the SHL. So to be a recently drafted player who's slightly undersized, more offensively tilted, to be trusted with that much ice time as a team that is in the Champions League as well in Europe is pretty impressive. So I just wanted to highlight that. Axel, Sandin, Pellikka, better than you think defensively, I promise you. I say that to everyone that I talk to about him because it's true. You hear he's good at offense and you're like, oh, he must suck at defense. No, he's good at that too. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox and pass it off to you, Peter. Who's your prospect of the week this week?
Logan Cooley, who is taking his talents down under with the global series, scoring that absolutely insane, goal, and we talked about it off the top of the show. To see him do that in his first game, and I know it's preseason, it's not like the regular season where it matters, but that's a good sign for a young prospect coming in that's giving this organization hope, where there's a lot of turmoil with their ownership, arena situation, and all that, but he's just an absolutely phenomenal and dynamic player. And that goal said it all. Cutting in, spinorama, literally maintaining his balance, getting into a prime shooting lane and getting that puck off. Wow. Who would have thought that we'd already have a goal of the year candidate just like one game in, or the first game that was played of the preseason. So we're going to see obviously he's their top name at this point, and he's given them a lot of hope, and he's going to be an absolutely dynamic force as a rookie this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I just love seeing that goal. I don't know if you guys saw it the night that it happened or the next morning, because like Peter, you mentioned the time difference makes it a bit difficult to watch those games in. I think they're in Melbourne, Australia. So it's a little tough to get those games on. But just a phenomenal goal. Exactly what you should expect from this player. Just dynamic skill, great speed, just on that whole rush, honestly. He's probably a top 6 center for the Coyotes on day one, and might not be on the second line, at least not for very long. So this is gonna be just a joy to watch him this year. It's gonna be a really fun Calder race. But that is gonna do it for us this week. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Prospect Corner. Make sure you subscribe to the Hockey Writers YouTube channel to make sure you catch all of our new episodes. And also make sure you check out our site, thehockeywriters.com, for tons of draft and prospect content as the year starts. It's exciting. The 2024 draft starts. Make sure you check out Peter's draft rankings for all 32 and a handful of honorable mentions as well. Really great stuff there, Peter. So thanks for letting us grill you on that one today. But thank you, Peter and Matt, as always, for joining me. And thank you all for joining us on this week's edition of Prospect Corner. We'll see you next time.